Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Wednesday, 11 February. I'm your host Daniel, and today we're going to talk about the Telegram CEO has vowed to fight for the app amid Russian pressure. India is tightening its AI rules for social media platforms, and the Dutch police have arrested 15 people over Islamic State TikTok posts. So firstly, Telegram's Russian-born founder Pavel Durov said late on Tuesday that he was not going to bow to pressure from Russian authorities, writing that the app stands for freedom and privacy no matter the pressure. You can see his TikTok, his X post there on screen. But Russian state communications watchdog said earlier in the day that the popular messaging app would face further restrictions from authorities because it failed to correct previous violations. Users reported slowing traffic and lagging downloads throughout Tuesday as Russia moved to tighten controls on the key channel for both public and private communications in the country. So what? In my opinion, is likely a move to try and limit the amount of military information coming out through the app, as it's commonly used for both propaganda and command and control within the Russian military. It's also possibly a counterintelligence move, as lots of these groups and, it's not an encrypted platform. It's not military communications. So it's almost certainly has Ukrainian intelligence working on it, identifying information, and both Russian looking for Ukrainian information as well. But, it's not like the Russian government is going to stop Russian intelligence access to the app, only Russian citizens. So it's possibly a counterintelligence move to try and limit the amount of information and also, human intelligence operations happening through the app. Due to its encryption, it's a great way to communicate with sources and agents within Russia. It possibly could have been identified as the communication platform for the recent assassination attempt. Something like that. It's also possibly a warning sign that the situation in Ukraine is getting worse for Russia, and they want to limit the amount of information that's both getting back to the Russian people and to Western countries. Personally, for me, it's annoying due to the limit on reporting. So I get a lot of my information from Telegram. I'm in a lot of Russian Telegram groups, and I use it a lot for collection. So if it's going to be limited, it's a loss for me personally as the HM Intelligence page. But that kind of comes back to my first points as to why they're likely trying to do this. And next, India's Ministry of Information Technology has updated its rules for the use of generated artificial intelligence on social media platforms. Now, platforms have 3 hours to remove content requested by authorities. Previously, they had 36 hours to take down such content. Under India's IT rules, authorities can order the removal of content deemed illegal under any of its laws, including those related to national security and public order. So what? I think this is going to place significant pressure on tech companies just due to the size of the Indian market and the amount of people that are using social media within the country and the short turnaround times. Like 3 hours is pretty quick. Like it's going to require them to remove stuff instantly once asked and then figure out whether they can push back, whether it's actually okay, whether they should not allow Indian IT rules to govern that specific post. So, huge undertaking here. And it's going to be framed as protection for people. They're trying to counter the amount of AI slop on platforms and propaganda and fake news under AI, but it's also could be used for state control. With such short turnaround times, if the Indian government do not like certain content, they can just order social media companies to get rid of it, and then they only have 3 hours to do it or face penalties. So they're probably just going to take it down and figure it out later, which gives India, a much higher level of control over the information that is being pushed out to the Indian people. And it's also possible that it'll lead to companies cracking down on AI slop. It's a huge issue on social media. I'm sure you will have seen it, as almost all of you will be constantly on social media. But just the amount of AI slop that's coming out at the moment is pretty outrageous, and it's hard to know what's real anymore. There's lots of videos I see where it looks real, and then suddenly I'm like, that seemed a bit odd or a bit strange, and then I have an AI checker that I use for basically any videos that I suspect aren't real, and it will tell me the likelihood of it being AI. And often it is. So, it's possible that social media companies will continue to crack down on that stuff just to avoid further scrutiny. And lastly, 15 people suspected of spreading Islamic State propaganda on TikTok have been arrested in raids across the Netherlands by Dutch police on Tuesday. The Dutch Public Prosecution Office said that 15 suspects were trying to incite others to commit terrorist crimes through ISIS propaganda, which included calls to join the Islamic terrorist group while glorifying the idea of martyrdom. Some of the posts were viewed by more than 100,000 people, or 100,000 times, Dutch authorities said. The arrests came as police launched a nationwide probe into TikTok accounts that spread such propaganda with Dutch subtitles. The glorifying and dissemination of propaganda significantly undermines public safety, prosecutors said, emphasizing that publishing Islamic State propaganda was a punishable offense. So what? So it's possible that these people were directed from some kind of ISIS leadership, most likely at this stage in Africa, as they are pretty well degraded in Iraq and Syria, similar to how it would have been done in the past. ISIS was a very well organized institution back before its destruction, and they pushed the messaging out from the core. They had an entire media team who would create posts and get people around the world to share it. But it's also possible that this was just a homegrown effort of people that idealized the Islamic State and wanted to try and, just rev up a bit of trouble within the Netherlands. It also shows that, ISIS continues to remain a threat in Europe, and that security services continue to monitor it as such, which is good. Islamic extremism hasn't really gone anywhere, and it's still a very credible threat within Europe. Additionally, it shows the drop in notoriety since the height of ISIS. So back in the day, these kind of posts on social media would get millions of views. Now the Dutch authorities are saying they got 100,000 views. It kind of just shows you in an interesting way, the fall off of the Islamic State and how less notable it is, which I find kind of interesting. Islamic extremism is still a popular ideology within Islam. So yeah, to see such low numbers for reporting on an app that is more than capable of pushing videos to the millions is quite interesting for me. But anyway, that's been the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you.